A young girl comes knocking on strangers' homes one day, asking if they had any jobs for her to do. The cops find out about it and follow her to find out why. One summer day, a 4-year-old girl walked along Oak Street, knocking from door to door. She was in a ragged shirt, sweatpants, and rubber slippers as she went her way. The young girl, who was to turn 5 in a couple of months, was wise for her age. She was street smart, and she knew how to get around the neighborhood, even alone. It was early in the morning, and many people were still asleep, as it was the weekend. She went up to a house and knocked, but no one answered. She was sure people were home in the next house as loud music blasted inside. There was a party still ongoing, even at 7 in the morning. A long-haired man opened the door as the music blasted behind him. "Hi, I'm Abigail. Do you have a job for me?" she asked him. The man was confused and immediately responded, "What? No, I'm not interested in buying anything." He immediately shut the door, so Abigail walked towards the next house. As she knocked, she could hear a dog barking from inside. A couple of seconds later, an older woman opened the door, her house smelling like freshly baked cookies. "Hello, little girl," the woman said with a smile. "Hi, my name is Abigail. Do you have a job for me?" she asked. The woman was surprised by the girl's response. "How old are you, Abigail?" "I'm 4 years old, turning 5 in 3 months," she said, showing her age through her fingers. "You are so young. Little girls shouldn't be working," the old woman responded. "But I need money. My mom said I need to work to get money," Abigail said, looking down at her feet. Concerned, the woman offered, "Would you like to have some milk and cookies before you go your way?" Grandma Betty just finished baking and invited the young girl in. Abigail was delighted. She smiled and nodded as she made her way inside Grandma Betty's house. While Abigail helped herself to some milk and cookies, the old lady proceeded to call the police. When 911 answered her call, she shared the story of young Abigail. "A 4-year-old girl is walking on our street, knocking from door to door, searching for work. I think you should investigate this. I'm worried for her," she said. A couple of minutes later, an officer named Melvin Johnson arrived at the woman's house. The woman had been cleaning her kitchen, while Abigail was supposed to be watching TV in her living room. However, as she and the officer went to the living room, Abigail was nowhere to be found. "But she was right here," Grandma Betty said, concerned. "She must have run away or continued searching for a job. She was eager to find one," the old woman told the officer. "Don't worry, ma'am. We'll search for her and make sure to find out what's happening," the officer assured her. With that, the police began their search. They found Abigail's pink slipper along the way and went on to follow her trail. Officer Johnson soon found the little girl on the side of the road, crying as she buried her face in her knees. "Abigail?" he slowly asked. When the young girl looked up, he was confident it was her. Abigail injured her leg while running, losing one of her slippers along the way. Officer Johnson took her to the hospital, and there, the young girl shared her story. "I live with my mom and grandma in a tiny trailer. My grandmother's legs have been painful for weeks. We lived in a big house, but there was a fire, and now we have no home," she cried. "I just want my grandma to sit in a soft chair, so her legs won't hurt. We're trying to save money for a chair for grandma, one with pink flowers," Abigail explained. The officer was surprised at the young girl's pure heart. He asked her where she lived, and he took her home. When he got home that day, he couldn't stop thinking about Abigail and what she was willing to do for her grandmother's sake. The following day, he called his colleagues for a meeting at the police station, where he shared the girl's story. A couple of weeks later, Officer Johnson returned to Abigail's home. Her mother and grandmother were scared, thinking maybe the officer had an arrest warrant for them after what happened to Abigail. "3 of you, please step into my vehicle and come with me," he said sternly. Abigail, her mother, and her grandmother were sure they'd end up in prison. They followed the policeman without question, not wanting to anger him. As they rode the car, Abigail's eyes filled with tears. She was frightened until she realized that she knew where they were going. They were in their old neighborhood. Abigail's mom and grandmother realized this too, and they were curious about why they were there. "What are we doing here?" Abigail's mom asked. Officer Johnson stopped the car on their old property, where their house had burned down. However, instead of the rubble, they found a newly built home and a team of policemen standing in front of it. "The boys and I just thought we could do something for you," Officer Johnson told them, handing them keys. Abigail couldn't believe her eyes, and neither could her mom and grandmother. "Is this a prank?" Abigail's mom couldn't help but ask. Officer Johnson shook his head and escorted them out of the car. "Please, take a look," he said, leading them towards the beautiful new house. The family learned that the officers pitched in money from their own pockets to rebuild their house. They saw a comfortable chair with pink flowers sitting in the living room as they entered the house. "This is for your grandmother," Officer Johnson told Abigail. "Grandma, this is from your granddaughter. I hope she makes you proud because she is someone worth being proud of," he said, speaking to Abigail's grandma Stacy, who was in awe. Abigail and her family settled into their new home. Abigail's mom found a job, and they slowly filled their home with things they needed as soon as they could afford them. Officer Johnson remained a good friend of their family, and so did Grandma Betty, who one day came to visit with the officer to see how Abigail was doing. The family called the officer their guardian angel, and they'd often share meals together whenever he dropped by.